When Mark discovers his wife Emily's affair, his world shatters. Fueled by betrayal, he meticulously plots his revenge, determined to reclaim control of his life and protect his children. As secrets unravel, tensions rise, and emotions boil over, Mark's carefully crafted plans lead to devastating consequences. In a shocking twist of fate, the story veers into tragedy, testing the limits of love, loss, and the bonds of family. This gripping tale of betrayal and redemption will keep you on the edge of your seat until its heartbreaking conclusion. I always thought my marriage was untouchable. Emily and I were the couple everyone envied, 2 kids, a suburban home with a white picket fence, and careers that complemented each other. I worked in IT, solving puzzles and problems, while Emily, with her charm and wit, built a thriving marketing business. We had a balance, a rhythm. At least, that's what I let myself believe. The cracks started small. Emily's late-night meetings became more frequent, her business trips more sudden. I dismissed it all as the natural evolution of her growing success. After all, I'd always admired her drive. But admiration turned to doubt the evening her phone buzzed on the counter while she was upstairs packing for yet another trip. I didn't intend to snoop. I'd been making coffee, half focused on my own emails, when the screen lit up. A single message glowed against the dark surface: "Can't wait to see you again, love." The word love lodged in my chest like a shard of glass. For a moment, I convinced myself it must be a mistake, a client, a friend, someone who had used an affectionate term out of context. But my gut churned with something darker. Against my better judgment, I picked up the phone and saw the sender's name, Trevor. I didn't know a Trevor. That night, Emily kissed me goodbye with her usual warmth, her suitcase wheeled to the door. I kissed her back, acting as if nothing was wrong, while my mind spiraled through every scenario. Who was Trevor? How long had this been going on? And how could I confirm my suspicions without tipping her off? The next morning, I set my plan in motion. Emily had barely left the driveway before I logged into our joint phone plan account. I combed through her call logs, noting one number that appeared over and over: Trevor. A quick search of the number led me to his social media profile. His face grinned back at me, a younger man, athletic and polished, the kind of guy Emily used to dismiss as shallow. Over the next few weeks, I played the part of the loving, oblivious husband. But I wasn't idle. I installed a GPS tracker in Emily's car and synced her phone data to a secure app on my laptop. Every trip, every text, every meeting was now part of my investigation. It wasn't just about knowing anymore, it was about taking control. The evidence piled up fast. Hotel reservations under her name but billed to his address. Late-night texts filled with intimate details. A charge for an expensive bracelet from a boutique I'd never heard of. She wasn't just cheating, she was building a life with someone else while pretending our family was intact. The hardest part wasn't gathering the evidence. It was pretending nothing had changed. Every morning, I kissed her goodbye with a smile that barely masked my growing anger. Every evening, I listened to her recount stories of work while biting back the urge to confront her. I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she'd done, and for that, I needed a plan. On a rainy Friday evening, I finally saw my chance. Emily had just announced another work trip, her 3rd that month. I suggested we go out for dinner before she left, a quiet meal, just the 2 of us, to reconnect. She hesitated at first, then relented, offering me a sheepish smile as though she was doing me a favor. The restaurant was perfect: candlelight, soft music, and a quiet corner table where we wouldn't be overheard. As we sipped wine and waited for our entrees, I slid a small envelope across the table. "What's this?" Emily asked, her tone light but wary. "Open it," I said, keeping my voice calm. She tore the envelope carefully, her expression shifting as she pulled out the contents. Photos of her and Trevor, time-stamped and damning. Copies of her hotel reservations. A transcript of texts I had pulled from her phone. Her face drained of color as she flipped through the pages. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "You tell me," I replied, leaning back in my chair. "Because I've been wondering what Trevor has that I don't." Emily's mouth opened, then closed, as though she couldn't decide which lie to tell first. "It's not, Mark, it's not what it looks like." "Don't," I snapped, my composure slipping. "Don't insult me by lying right now." Her defenses crumbled. Tears filled her eyes, and she began to stammer apologies, excuses, promises. She said she felt neglected, that it was a mistake, that she still loved me. Each word was like a blade, cutting deeper into wounds that had barely begun to form. I let her ramble for a while, my silence forcing her to fill the void. When she finally ran out of words, I slid a second envelope across the table. "What's this now?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Your confession," I said. "Everything you've done, in writing. You're going to sign it, and then you're going to leave." Her eyes widened. "Mark, please." "No," my tone was steel. "You don't get to plead with me now. I've already spoken to a lawyer. The house is in my name, and the custody arrangement is clear. You will sign this, or I will make sure every one of your friends, your clients, and your family knows exactly what you've done." Emily stared at me, her tears falling freely now. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "Yes, I do," I replied. "Because you already did." She signed the confession with a shaking hand, her pen scratching against the paper as if it hurt her to write the truth. When she was done, I folded the paper carefully and stood. "Enjoy your trip," I said, my voice cold. "It's the last one you'll take on my dime." I left her sitting there, alone at the table, her tears pooling on the glossy surface. Emily didn't come home that night. Not that I expected her to. The humiliation at the restaurant must have been too much for her to face. I imagined she went straight to Trevor, seeking comfort and validation, or perhaps just a safe place to collect her thoughts. Either way, I didn't care. I slept better that night than I had in months. The next morning, I got up early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with a list. Everything I needed to do was outlined: lawyer appointments, financial account reviews, custody arrangements. My kids, Mia and James, were my top priority. Whatever Emily had done to betray me, I wouldn't let it spill over into their lives more than it already had. The kids were still asleep, so I had time to prepare. First, I opened the drawer where we kept important documents and pulled out our financial statements. I wanted to ensure Emily hadn't siphoned any money into accounts I didn't know about. Our savings were intact, and the joint checking account only showed regular household expenses. That was good, she hadn't had the foresight to plan her escape financially. But that didn't mean she hadn't planned it in other ways. Next, I made a call to my lawyer, Richard. He had been briefed on the situation earlier in the week, but now it was time to move forward. "Mark," he greeted when he answered. "Do we proceed as planned?" "Yes," I said. She signed the confession. "I'm ready to file." "Good. I'll have the papers ready by the end of the day. You'll want to start separating your accounts and securing the house." "It's already in my name," I assured him. "What about custody?" "With the evidence you have and her confession, it's unlikely she'll get anything beyond supervised visitation unless she fights it. But that's a battle she probably can't afford." Richard's calm confidence helped steady me. "Thanks, Richard. Let me know when I can sign." By the time the kids woke up, I was pouring pancakes onto a hot griddle, acting like it was just another Saturday morning. Mia, my 10-year-old, bounded into the kitchen first, her curly hair a mess from sleep. "Where's Mom?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. "She's still on her trip," I said, keeping my tone casual. "But I thought we could have a special breakfast today. Just the three of us." James, my 6-year-old, followed soon after, groggily taking a seat at the table. Neither of them pressed further about Emily's absence, which told me just how normal her late returns had become to them. The thought stung. We spent the morning as a family, the kids laughing as we played board games and ran around the backyard. For a few hours, I allowed myself to forget the storm brewing. But when I heard the garage door open around noon, reality came crashing back. Emily walked in, her hair disheveled, her eyes puffy from crying. She froze when she saw us in the living room, her gaze flicking to me before settling on the kids. "Mom!" Mia exclaimed, running to hug her. James followed, though more cautiously. "Hi, sweethearts," Emily said, forcing a smile. "I missed you." I stood silently, watching her interact with them, my arms crossed. She glanced at me nervously, knowing she had no right to play the role of the doting mother after what she'd done. Once the kids were distracted with a cartoon, I motioned for her to follow me into the kitchen. She hesitated but eventually complied. "We need to talk," I said flatly, keeping my voice low. "I know," she replied, her tone defensive. "Mark, Don't," I interrupted. "I'm not interested in excuses or apologies. We're past that." She flinched, her eyes welling with fresh tears. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to leave," I said firmly. "Today." "You've already signed the confession. I've filed for divorce. I'm keeping the house, and I've already spoken to a lawyer about custody." Her face crumpled. "Mark, please. The kids will stay with me," I said, cutting her off again. "You can have visitation, but you will not disrupt their lives any more than you already have. Do you understand?" Emily looked like she might collapse. She reached for a chair and sat down heavily, her head in her hands. "I didn't want this," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "Then why did it?" I asked, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Why wasn't this family enough for you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she sobbed quietly, her shoulders shaking. For a fleeting moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered Trevor, the photos, the lies. My resolve hardened. "You have until tonight to pack your things," I said, turning to leave. "I'll tell the kids you're staying somewhere else for work. I won't let them think you abandoned them." Emily didn't respond as I walked away. By the time the kids were asleep that night, her car was gone, and the house felt strangely quiet. I stood in the doorway of their shared bedroom, watching them breathe softly, their innocence blissfully intact. This was the first step. There was still so much to do, legal battles, emotional scars to heal, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. Emily was out of the house, and I was finally in control of my life again. The first week after Emily left was both a whirlwind and a strange calm. The absence of her presence was palpable, but so was the newfound peace in the house. No more walking on eggshells, no more feigned smiles or awkward conversations. It was just me and the kids, navigating our new normal. Mia, ever perceptive, started asking questions after school one day. "Is Mom okay?" she asked, setting her backpack down at the kitchen table. "She's fine," I said, keeping my tone light. "She's just busy with work right now." Mia frowned, not fully convinced. "She's been gone a lot." I knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I know, sweetheart. But we're going to be okay. It's just us for now, and I'm going to make sure you and James have everything you need." Her eyes searched mine for reassurance, and I could see the worry etched on her young face. "Okay, Dad." Later that evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I allowed myself a moment to think about what lay ahead. My lawyer had sent over the finalized divorce papers, and all that was left was to serve Emily. Richard had advised against doing it myself. Emotions were too high, and confrontation could complicate things. But I wanted her to know I wasn't backing down. Instead, I arranged for a process server to deliver the papers to her at Trevor's apartment. I knew that would sting, her new life intruded upon by the mess she created. It was petty, perhaps, but I didn't care. After what she had put me through, she deserved every ounce of discomfort. 2 days later, I got a text from Emily. It was short and to the point. I got the papers. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. There's nothing left to talk about. The days turned into weeks, and I threw myself into work and parenting. My IT job, once a source of pride, now felt like a lifeline, a way to keep my mind busy. The kids adjusted better than I expected, though there were moments of sadness, especially from James. "Do you think Mom's coming back?" he asked one night as I tucked him in. "I don't know, buddy," I said honestly. "But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." He nodded, his small hands gripping the edge of his blanket. "I miss her." "I know," I said, brushing his hair back. "It's okay to miss her. But we're going to be okay, I promise." Emily's visits were sporadic at first. She would drop by to see the kids, staying just long enough to play the role of the doting mother before retreating back to Trevor's. I stayed out of her way, keeping our interactions brief and civil for the sake of Mia and James. But each time she left, I could see the confusion in their eyes, the cracks in their understanding of what was happening. One evening, she stayed longer than usual, waiting until the kids had gone to bed before asking to speak with me. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. "What is it, Emily?" I asked, leaning against the kitchen counter. She looked tired, her once bright eyes dimmed by the weight of her choices. "Mark, I'm sorry. I know I've hurt you. I know I've hurt the kids." I said nothing, waiting for her to continue. "I don't know what I was thinking," she admitted. "Trevor, it wasn't worth it. None of this was worth it." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Funny how it took losing everything for you to realize that." She winced. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway." I shook my head, the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "This isn't about forgiveness, Emily. This is about consequences. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." Her shoulders sagged, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But instead, she nodded and stood to leave. Before she walked out, she turned back to me. "I still love you, Mark. I just wanted you to know that." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The words felt hollow, meaningless after everything she had done. The turning point came a few weeks later, when Emily's new life with Trevor began to unravel. I heard about it through a mutual friend, who mentioned in passing that Trevor had been seen with someone else, a younger woman, carefree and unattached. It didn't take long for the rumors to reach Emily, and soon she was calling me, desperate for help. "Mark, I need you," she said, her voice trembling. "You need me?" I repeated, incredulous. "After everything?" "It's not what you think," she pleaded. "Trevor, he's gone. I don't have anywhere else to go." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. "You made your bed, Emily. Now you have to lie in it. Please," she begged. "For the kids." The mention of Mia and James gave me pause. I didn't want them to see their mother in such a broken state, but I also couldn't let her waltz back into our lives as if nothing had happened. "I'll think about it," I said finally, hanging up before she could say more. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Emily's choices had shattered our family, but the kids still loved her. They deserved a chance to have her in their lives, even if I couldn't bear the sight of her. In the end, I decided to let her visit more often, but under strict conditions. She wouldn't move back in. She wouldn't disrupt the stability I had worked so hard to rebuild. And she would never again hold the power to hurt me or my children. It wasn't forgiveness. It was practicality. I had my life back, and I wasn't going to let her take it from me again. Life began to settle into a strained rhythm. Emily's visits became a weekly occurrence, and though I still carried the scars of her betrayal, I kept my focus on the kids. They seemed happier with her around, even if only for a few hours at a time. For their sake, I tolerated her presence, biting my tongue as she tried to act like the mother they once knew. But the wounds she had inflicted on me remained raw, and I was careful to maintain my distance. It was a brisk autumn evening when everything changed. Emily had arrived that day for her usual visit, bringing along a batch of cookies she claimed to have baked herself. The kids eagerly devoured them while she sat at the table, regaling them with tales of her week. I watched from the living room, pretending to read, my attention split between their laughter and the ache in my chest. "Can we go to the park, Dad?" Mia asked suddenly, her eyes bright with excitement. I hesitated. The sun was already dipping below the horizon, and the air was colder than usual. But before I could answer, Emily chimed in. "I'll take them," she offered, smiling at me. "You've been working hard. Take a break." I studied her for a moment, searching for any trace of manipulation, but her expression seemed sincere. Against my better judgment, I agreed. "All right," I said. "Be back before it gets too dark." Emily beamed, and within minutes, she and the kids were bundled up and out the door. The house felt eerily quiet without their chatter, and I found myself restless. I paced the kitchen, tidying up as I waited for their return. An hour passed. Then 2. My unease grew with every tick of the clock. I tried calling Emily's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic clawed at my chest as scenarios played out in my mind. Had she taken them? Was she trying to pull some stunt to regain control? I grabbed my coat and headed to the park, hoping to find them there. The streets were deserted, the playground eerily empty under the flickering glow of a street lamp. I called out their names, my voice echoing in the cold air, but there was no response. Just as I was about to call the police, my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I answered, my voice shaking. "Is this Mark Harrison?" a man asked, his tone serious. "Yes," I said quickly. "Who is this?" "This is Officer Bennett with the Charlotte Police Department. We need you to come to 5th and Main immediately." My heart plummeted. What's going on? Are my kids okay? "Sir," the officer said gently, "please come to the scene. We'll explain everything when you get here." I didn't even respond. I jumped into my car and sped through the city, barely stopping at lights, my hands trembling on the wheel. When I arrived, the scene before me felt surreal, a smashed car against a lamppost, its front end crumpled like paper. Police lights painted the street in harsh, flashing colors. I stumbled out of the car and ran toward the scene. A police officer stopped me, placing a firm hand on my chest. "Are you Mark Harrison?" he asked. "Yes." I gasped. "Where are my kids? Where's Emily?" The officer's face softened with a sorrow that told me everything before he spoke. "I'm sorry, sir. There's been an accident." "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, no, no. Your wife was driving," he continued, his voice low. "She lost control of the vehicle. It seems she swerved to avoid a pedestrian." I barely heard him. My eyes were fixed on the wreckage, on the paramedics working frantically, on the stretchers lined up beside the ambulance. "Are they?" I couldn't finish the question. The officer hesitated. "Your daughter Mia is alive, but she's in critical condition. She's being rushed to the hospital now. Your son. I'm sorry, sir. He didn't make it." The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I staggered, clutching at the officer for support. "James. My sweet, bright-eyed boy. Gone. Just like that. And Emily? I forced out. She didn't survive the crash, the officer said, his tone heavy with regret. She was killed on impact. I fell to my knees, the cold asphalt biting through my jeans. My mind refused to process the enormity of what had just happened. My son. My wife. The woman who had betrayed me and the woman I had once loved. Both gone in an instant. The days that followed were a blur of grief and disbelief. Mia remained in the hospital, fighting for her life, while I fought to hold myself together. The house felt emptier than ever, haunted by the echoes of laughter and memories I would never have again. At the funeral, I stood between the two caskets, one far too small, the other holding the remains of a woman I could no longer bring myself to hate. In death, Emily was just as she had been in life, complicated, flawed, and inescapably tied to my heart. As I said my final goodbyes, I realized that forgiveness wasn't about her. It was about me. I let go of the anger, the resentment, the pain she had caused. All that was left was the ache of loss and the determination to carry on for Mia. Life would never be the same. But as I held my daughter's hand in the hospital weeks later, her fragile smile giving me hope, I knew one thing: I would keep going. For her. For James. For the life we had lost and the one we still had to live.